Cancel culture. What started from fandoms, Black Twitter, and Love and Hip Hop,
You canceled.
Canceled?
is now basically a staple in mainstream media. It seems like someone is always getting canceled. Take this quarantine. In the past 5 months, we've had Doja Cat, Jeffree Star, Shane Dawson, the pervy comedian from You, who's actually a pervy comedian in real life, Lana Del Rey, J.K. Rowling, and even Jimmy Fallon. A few weeks ago, it seemed like Chris Evans was also getting canceled. Hashtag Chris Evans' over party was trending on Twitter, but it turns out he wasn't actually getting canceled, it was just people swarming to see if he was. But that's the essence of how canceling works. Someone does something reprehensible, people swarm online, and boom.
You canceled.
But where does cancel culture come from in the first place? Even though it wasn't called cancel culture before the internet, people could still be canceled, just not in the way they are today. Take, for example, the Hollywood Blacklist, which happened during the Second Red Scare after World War II. A Red Scare is when a society or state promotes fear of a potential rise in communism or anarchism. In this case, during the Cold War, the US was investigating both real and alleged American communists whose actions were sympathetic to the Soviet Union, including figures in both entertainment and in Hollywood. Those who didn't comply were blacklisted and prevented from working. Some, like Dolphin Trumbo, were eventually able to make a comeback, but a lot of careers were destroyed during that period too, which is what you see today. The biggest names, depending on what they've done, can usually make it back, but people with less influence have a much harder time. Boycotting is a form of canceling as well. One of the most famous being the Montgomery Bus Boycott to protest Jim Crow laws in the South. And it worked. Enough people took other modes of transit that it financially hurt the busing system. This led to court, where Alabama's segregation laws were deemed unconstitutional. The Supreme Court supported the decision, and after over a year, the boycott ended. But today, instead of the government or large activist groups, it's usually just masses of people online, with a few exceptions. Is that bad? Well, it kind of depends. Let me be clear. If you are assaulting people, harassing people, attacking people for something they cannot control, you deserve to be canceled. But sometimes it can go too far. Because when it comes down to it, if everyone is always canceling everybody else, it just turns into that social rating Black Mirror episode where if you get canceled and your rating is too low, you literally can't function in society. And to some people, that's actually happened in real life. One of the most famous cases being Monica Lewinsky, one of the first cancellations in the era of the internet. After the incident with President Clinton, she not only was publicly humiliated, but she also couldn't get a job.
You know, either somebody offered me a job for the wrong reasons, like, oh, you'll be coming to our events, that's your job, and there's media there. I mean, there was this wide range of not being able to support myself.
Also, in the case of the 2015 AIDS tweet, Justine Sacco tweeted, "Going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS. Just kidding, I'm white." It was insensitive and inappropriate and racist. But what was intended as a satirical joke and a string of jokes throughout the day basically destroyed her. In this Jubilee clip, though, participants described the potential benefits of cancel culture.
The pendulum has swung the other direction, and yes, maybe it's getting a little extreme, but I also think sometimes that's necessary for change.
Without the Me Too movement online, seemingly untouchable figures like Harvey Weinstein, Matt Lauer, Bill O'Reilly, Bill Cosby, Charlie Rose, Larry Nassar, Kevin Spacey would still have their power. But just because you're canceled doesn't mean you're muted. Take R. Kelly. He was accused of being a pedophile, having sex with minors, running a cult, abusing women. He did this in an interview with Gayle King, but his streams only went up. Bill O'Reilly was fired from Fox News in April of 2017. While he isn't permanently back on Fox, that September, he was on Sean Hannity's show. Most recently, Nick Cannon was fired from Viacom CBS for making anti-Semitic comments. But he received a lot of support online from fans, and even Diddy backed him up and offered him a job. Which is what makes the canceling of celebrities different from the average person. The amount of support they receive. When people like Taylor Swift, Kanye West, Kevin Hart, Logan Paul, James Charles, Jeffree Star, and most recently Shane Dawson got canceled, they still have a fan base that supports them, whether they did or didn't do what they were accused of, or whether what they did or didn't do was forgivable or not. Which is what makes the canceling of celebrities different from the canceling of average people. This is also part of what made the Harper's Magazine letter so controversial. Part of the critique is those who signed the letter already had big platforms and influence, but underrepresented voices whose lives would actually be destroyed if they were canceled weren't included. With the power and the influence that the signatories have, they could come back, even if it takes some time. After Taylor Swift was canceled, she made Reputation. Kevin Hart apologized and gave it some time. Logan Paul Thriving, James Charles, and Sister Snapped. And the same can reasonably be expected of Shane Dawson. But what about the other people? The average person doesn't have millions who can defend them. In a TED Talk, journalist John Ronson says those people need support too.
You know, I think the very best thing we can do if you see a kind of, you know, an unfair or an ambiguous shaming is to speak up. Because I think the worst thing that happened to Justine was that nobody supported her, like everyone was against her. That is profoundly traumatizing.
OG YouTuber Hank Green sort of echoes this on Twitter, writing, "I really strongly believe that we should be judged not by how we acted when we were ignorant, but how we responded when we were informed. Just because we've seen someone at their absolute worst online doesn't mean it should be held over their head for the rest of their life, especially if they've shown they've grown. There are certain instances where it's not applicable. But I think it would be valuable if we learned to show a bit of empathy as well." That's all I've got for you this week in terms of content. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel for more content. Follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. And that's it. I'll see you in the next one.